Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ambassador Dermer. Thank you all, dear friends, readers, Israel supporters. Thank you all for staying here till the end of the long conference and for waiting to hear from me. So, you know, we've heard, in fact, Ambassador Dermer was talking about narratives, and he is the diplomat and I am the columnist. So I want to do a little bit of naming names. Many of you heard read the profile of Ben Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, where, you know, we found that we have a young man with no security background, with no foreign policy background, but what he does have is a background in creative writing. And he was brought in to shape the media strategy for selling President Obama's foreign policy, and he's done it extraordinarily well. And in fact, I think when you look at the profile of him in the New York Times, that you see that what he's doing is taking a victory lap, that he was able to succeed in his job, which is to manipulate public opinion in order to advance the foreign policy goal of President Obama. And he was successful in the very narrow sphere that he has defined as his area of operation. The problem is that when you're trying to sell a policy because you're supposed to win, you don't actually think about whether that policy is the right policy or not. When you block debate on what the right option for your country is going to be, when you have an army of hired guns who act as independent voices, but in fact are acting in concert with the White House and as its surrogates, then you're blocking debate. You're blocking a population from becoming an informed population, which is the basis of democracy. And when you have journalists in Washington who are supposed to be experts in national security, who, as Ben Rhodes said, know literally nothing, and are coming to the White House for guidance and then mindlessly parroting the talking points that they're provided for by the White House or many of the dozens and dozens and dozens of think tanks, news organizations, public action committees, human rights committees, and so on and so forth that are claiming expert status on Iran, and they're all giving you the same lies based upon a narrative that says there are moderates against extremists, and you can either support the deal and get peace or oppose it and have war. Then you have destroyed the profession of journalism. You have destroyed the profession of journalism. When you personalize the struggle and say it's our guy against Prime Minister Netanyahu, when you say that Republicans who oppose the deal are warmongers and the people who support it are for peace, you're not giving people the information they need to make choices. You're not having a policy debate at all. What you're having is a personalized attack against your opponents that's aimed on discrediting them in order to prevent them from making cogent arguments to the public and to themselves. This is extremely dangerous, and the fact that we've reached this point is something that we all have to stand back and examine ourselves as journalists, ourselves as citizens, ourselves as people who are concerned about real policy issues. Today, all day long, you've heard people from all across the ideological, the political spectrum, the cultural spectrum, people who deal with issues in a very serious way, who are committed to finding solutions to some of the many, many, many problems that Israel faces, that the free world faces as we move forward in the 21st century. What you heard is real people who are truly concerned and professional and qualified to deal with the issues that they're dealing with, trying to put together tactics and strategies for achieving the aim of making our world a better place. This is a serious debate that you heard here. Everybody here was serious. Where did we have that? Where do we have that today? in the wider scope of journalism, not only in Israel, but in Europe and in the United States, throughout the Western world, I dare say we have what Ben Rhodes referred to as an echo chamber, and I have to tell you, I am deeply, deeply distressed by this, because, as Ambassador Dermer said, in a far more diplomatic way, we were sold a bill of goods by the administration, who is now openly admitting that the bill of goods was a deliberate manipulation of public opinion in order to sell a policy that on its own could never have passed, because it makes no sense, because all of the rationales that they gave were lies, right? They said that there was going to be the most intrusive inspections regime ever, and that Iran wouldn't be able to cheat. As it works out, no inspections regime of suspected military sites. And Iran gets to decide what a military site is, meaning Iran gets to inspect itself or say you're not allowed to inspect us. So we have no idea actually how much nuclear material remains in Iran. And so on and so forth, down the line, as Congressman Royce was laying out today, whether it's in military equipment that they're able to transfer to Hezbollah, the repeated ballistic missile tests that they've taken since the deal was supposedly concluded, even though they never even signed it. You have the United States Secretary of State lobbying Europeans to do business with the Iranians. And you have Assad continuing to butcher his people, using chemical weapons against them in Syria, retaining power, again, as part of an American policy that was hidden from the public, to use the nuclear deal as a means, according to Rhodes, of walking away from America's alliance system with Israel and with the Sunni Arab states and embracing Iran. This would never have passed muster. It would never have been accepted by the American public had the American public known the truth. And this isn't only with regards to Iran, and it isn't only, as Ambassador Dermer discussed, with regards to the Palestinians. It's in regards to everything. Consider what happened in the South China Sea last week. China checkmated the U.S. Navy when they took over the disputed islands in the South China Sea, and it works out that the United States has no ability to retake the islands because China has outpaced the United States militarily, and nobody discusses it. The White House has put forward this idea of a pivot to Asia, right, that Obama is uniquely qualified to do in a way that none of his predecessors did. And so they don't want to discuss the fact that for the first time since World War II, the United States is no longer the dominant power in the Pacific Ocean. The impact and the implications of what just happened in China, in the South China Sea, for the U.S. economy are enormous. For free trade deals, when China now is stronger in the South China Sea than the United States, when it dominates the area. Nobody discusses it. The echo chamber in this case is not parroting lies. It's parroting the silence of the White House. So what do we do in these circumstances? How do you handle a situation where the vast majority of the information that you're being given is manipulation? What are you supposed to do when you're trying to have a discussion, an educated discussion about things, when the people who you're talking to, it's not that they're stupid, they're inundated by lies, posing as independent positions of experts, of journalists, who it works out like NPR received hundreds of thousands of dollars from a lobbying group for the Iran deal, Plowshares Foundation. What are you supposed to do? They have all their sources. The answer is you have to take responsibility for yourselves as citizens. In Israel, I believe that the public has in fact passed the Rubicon of relying on experts and elders who are our betters to tell us what we're supposed to think and how we're supposed to feel. And I think we see evidence of it in the governmental changes that we're witness to this week, and thank God for them. Because the truth of the matter, as Ambassador Dermer said, in a position where we are being force-fed lies, posing as fact, in order to confuse us about what the way forward is and what the actual policies and choices that we have to make as free people are, we have to rely on ourselves. If we go back to Groucho Marx's old joke, what are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes? We have to understand that our eyes are not lying to us. And we have to trust in our instincts, and we have to understand that as free people, whether in Israel or in the United States, in Europe and on, we have to be able to trust what we see, and we have to be able to trust what we know about the nature of people, about our own people, and not be confused by people who say that we're evil because we're not perfect. Israelis are not perfect. Americans are not perfect. Here's a little secret. Your parents probably told you, you're not perfect either. None of us are. That's the difference between us and God. And we have to be willing to take an imperfect world, imperfect humanity, imperfect nations, and say we can see the relative disparities between our nation and ISIS, between Israel and Hamas. We have to be Israel and the PLO, Israel and Iran, Saudi Arabia and Iran, for all we care right now in terms of proliferation. We have to be willing to live with a world with imperfect choices, where decisions about war and peace are not a question that we get to decide when one side is fighting and determined to destroy us. We have to be willing to listen to them. We have to be willing to hear what they're saying, to filter out the noise and the propaganda posing as fact. Because if we don't, nobody will do it for us. A year after the Iran deal, we see that every single warning that was sounded against this deal was correct. Every single one of the promises that were made about this deal were lies. And yet here we are, a year out, and the United States is now acting as Iran's lobbyist in Europe. It's time, just as we're doing in Israel, it is time for the free people of the world to seek out, as you do, the sources of information that you know are not lying to you, that are independent, that are not selling you a bill of goods, that are not being bought and paid for. You have to be willing to seek it out, because unfortunately, as time goes by and as the threats against us mount, truth is becoming harder and harder to come by, as our anointed ones would rather blame their political opponents for the threats arrayed against their country than look the enemy in the eye and say, we have to stand as one against you. I'm extremely worried, I have to tell you. This is the 5th year that we've been hosting these conferences, and I have to tell you that today I am very, very worried. After I read Ben Rhodes's article, it wasn't that he told me information that he didn't know. It was the triumphalism of it. It was that he was proud of what he did. So that he wasn't capable of understanding that what he did was wrong, and that this can't go on. That was a truly frightening thing for me. This nihilism, this notion that it doesn't matter. What difference does it make? It makes a difference. It makes a difference. You know, the shortest book in the Bible is Obadiah. It's 21 verses. And it essentially says, right, that Israel is going to stand and we're going to survive, and the people who are siding with our enemies are not, because we stand for the truth. And the people who stand with us aren't just standing for poor little Israel, they're standing for civilization. And when we talk about fighting BDS, when we talk about fighting jihad, when we talk about fighting for free markets and trade without barriers and discrimination, what we're talking about is a way of life, not only of Israel, but of the entire free world. And if Israel is treated like a leper for being the paragon of everything that we aspire to, because it's not perfect, then it's not only Israel that's endangered, it's everybody. It's everything that we care about. It's all of the countries that we've come to rely on as the free world. And that's why it isn't only important that you stand with Israel because you care about Israel per se. Standing with Israel and caring about Israel is about caring about human freedom. It's about caring about liberty. And the more you stand with Israel, the more you're securing your own freedom and that of your countries for posterity. Thank you. Now, I'm the last speaker, and therefore I'm going to end it here. I'm just going to tell you, God bless you all for being truth seekers, for seeing beyond the veil, for understanding that lies are not truth, for understanding that facts are not fiction, for understanding that it's important to care about issues and to fight for what's right and not to make up a narrative that you can sell on the evening news. These things are extraordinarily important. The Israeli people have turned a corner on this. We understand that we can't keep looking to somebody else to solve our problems for us. After 68 years, the Israeli people understand that the solutions to our problem lies within us. And we are so glad that we have our friends in the United States, Jews and non-Jews, who recognize that as well. And we trust that together we are all going to stand, and at the end of the day, the future of the free world is not going to be the future of Edom, of the Edomites, as prophesied by Obadiah. It is going to be the future of all of us together to live in freedom, not because it's easy, but because it's right and because it's true. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Carolyn, thank you very much.